With the flick of her pen, she writes, the magic within beginning to rise. The words flow, pages unfold, the stories delight. They help you to make a smile as you take my hand. You're spirited into a dreamy land. Into the story we ride, with the story spirits as our guide. Chapter 6. An old geezer stops by. The limo came to a stop at the entrance to Whistling Gulch Mountain Retreat, and a helpful staff member opened the door and gestured for the pair to step out onto what looked like a red carpet. "This feels so opulent," Rosalie said, admiring the posh wood beams and lodge architecture of the place. The limo driver removed their bags from the boot, but not before Greer and Molly McBottoms could remove the bag that held the rose of San Juan Capistrano. It was up to Catomancy to create a diversion so the two could hop out and drag the bag containing the rose and place it on the cart. Catomancy, who had been sleeping under the seat in the back of the limo, darted swiftly out of the car, forgetting or really not aware of the very strict no pets allowed policy of the retreat. The bellhop Darius and the front desk clerk Mercy both screamed at the same time. "Hey!" Darius yelled after Catomancy. "Come back here, you dratted cat!" While Mercy, using a more muted tone, ushered Rosalie and Calvin to the check-in desk while saying in a soft but stern voice, "Is that your cat?" Rosalie and Calvin had been so busy disembarking and admiring the hotel architecture that they hadn't even seen Catomancy jump out. "We didn't bring our cat," Calvin said, perplexed. "We were told there were no pets allowed," he said, his mind shifting to remote view how little Carnelian was doing at the boarding area of Posh Pets. He seemed okay and appeared to be playing with Poodles, who was chasing the little pup around the outdoor play area. Calvin relaxed, but Rosalie tensed as she saw Catomancy balancing on a beam of the roof high up there. She gently but firmly grasped Calvin's arm, and he slowly looked to where her gaze was fixed. "Oh my," Calvin said, trying not to laugh. "I believe he's gotten himself stuck there, but honestly," he said to Mercy, "we didn't intentionally bring him along. He's a very clever stowaway." Yes, it's true that a cat wizard was very adept at concealing themselves, and Catomancy had on many occasions taken it upon himself to tag along on their outings. He was Rosalie's familiar, after all. At that, a door marked "Management Only" burst open. A very old-looking gentleman looked up at the rafters and began shaking his fist at the cat. "Get that dastardly thing out of here at once!" he snarled to the couple. Rosalie tried to communicate with Catomancy, but he was having none of it. He spat out some foul-sounding cat language at the old man, gave Rosalie a "not now, I'm on to something" glare, and jumped from rafter to rafter until he could climb down and out the nearest window. And now to find the source of the horrible smell. As all cat wizards do, he knew without a shadow of a doubt that something was very wrong at this posh establishment. He was going to find out what, and then he was going to get Molly, Greer, and the Rose of SJC to help out yet again. Chapter 7. If I jump, are you going to jump too? Molly and Greer followed the baggage cart at a safe, not-to-be-seen distance, although most people couldn't see them anyway, having been too serious and adult-like to even imagine a fairy and a house elf in their presence. But we know, don't we, dear bringer of the light, that magic and magical beings abound around all of us, if we only take the time and quiet countenance to make note of them and say a cheerful hello as we pass by. The rose of San Juan Capistrano felt something in its presence, and its outer petals wilted slightly at the thought of it. Dark and ominous energy had that effect on its delicate parts. Greer and Molly waited patiently while all the bags were unloaded off the cart into the Whistling Stones suite. The bellhop politely held out his hand, and Calvin deposited a nice tip. They were, after all, staying here for free. They needed to pay the generosity forward somehow. "Is there a restaurant in the hotel?" Calvin asked, hoping so, because the mountain air and long drive had made him very hungry. "Yes," the bellhop said, gesturing out the window of their suite to a quaint-looking cabin that had smoke billowing from the chimney. "Auntie Bear's smokehouse and pancake kitchen is open all day and night. You'll find pretty much anything you could want there. Or," he said, pausing and not sure if he wanted to say anything about the other place, "there's another quaint lunchroom further into the forest. It's down a very clearly marked trail into the woods, and about a 10-minute walk if you want to chance it." "What do you mean, chance it?" Rosalie asked, perplexed. "Well, it has a somewhat strange backstory," the bellhop said, and then he quickly changed his tone. They weren't supposed to talk to guests about that time. "They have the best grilled cheese and honey sandwiches," he said, changing the subject. "I think we'll try that," Calvin said, intrigued. "Yes, let's try that," Rosalie said, sounding excited about the walk through the forest. "Well, it's settled then," Calvin said, walking to the door and helping the bellhop get the cart through. The bellhop looked slightly concerned, but made a mental note to follow up with Darius and Mercy at the front desk. These two were going to be difficult, he thought, as he adjusted his cap and made his way down the hall towards the elevator. Of course, if he hadn't brought up the other restaurant in the first place, then no one would have been the wiser. Many a guest had met otherworldly and dastardly dark circumstances on their quest for a grilled cheese and honey sandwich. Chapter 8. Mr. S. and the Honey Pot. Well, now he'd seen everything, Mr. S. thought, as he took the makings of his cauldron soup off the fire. The silly soup was supposed to be for the Whistling Gulch kitchens. It would be advertised as cream of mountain mushroom, but he was the only one who knew its true ingredients. The whole purpose of carrying out dark orders was to taint the energies around where one wanted to take on a stronghold. Everyone at the Whistling Gulch mountain retreat was too chipper and happy, well, except for management only. But that old geezer had been HQ's idea. Plant a rather seemingly harmless old man into the management section of the retreat. But he would on every occasion make it difficult for anyone he came into contact with, spreading his ill humor, dubious attitude, and unkind rhetoric. Only Mr. S. knew the true identity of Mr. Management Only, the golem having been created by S. himself out of an old dead tree branch, some icky muck at the bottom of Whistling Creek, and a dark heart from the dead insides of an old cantankerous raven who had met his demise one sunny afternoon. All these parts were whisked together under the light of a blood moon, and Management Only, otherwise known as Mr. Ravenbottom, was born. Everyone at the retreat's offices knew to stay out of his way, and no one even questioned what had happened to pretty little Millie Vanderhooven, who one day packed up all her belongings and disappeared into the night. The next morning, Management Only had slapped his moniker on the door and shown up to the breakfast buffet with a series of odious farts and stupid stories about how to beat people at chess so one could take all their earnings. The stories seemed at first to be harmless, but if one listened long enough, then their bright, happy humor became dark, gritty, and sickly, just like the old muck that Ravenbottom had been fashioned from. So now, to get the cream of mountain mushroom to the Whistling Gulch kitchens, instead of a lovely little Friday night s'mores roast, Mr. S. hoped to instill ill will and malice amongst all the guests who were only hoping to have a nice dinner and a chat. And where all the ill will would lead was part of Mr. S.'s plan. Chapter 9. Let's go get a grilled cheese. Rosalie and Calvin readied themselves for this outing. It was a short distance up a marked trail, the bellhop had said, but both of them knew it was best to be over-prepared. Calvin slipped on hiking boots, and Rosalie got her gloves and hat. They made sure their phones were fully charged and that they had the number of the hotel lobby just in case. While they were getting ready, Molly, Greer, and Catomancy, who had taken up residence in the coat closet, were also readying themselves. There was no way they were letting their friends go into a forest named after ferocious bears by themselves. "I'm really hungry," Calvin said, putting an energy bar in his pocket just in case. "Me too," Rosalie said, placing a tart cherry popover in a plastic biodegradable baggie and into her purse. They made sure they had everything they needed, following their intuition as they prepared. They opened the door to the balcony to look out over their retreat and to say a little prayer for guidance and gratitude as the preface to their outing. Calvin also carried his foraging pack just in case he saw a cool mushroom or wild thyme or something else that might prove useful or interesting to his class once he got home. They both bowed their heads and thanked their guides and source for the blessings of the now moment and for the energy that had brought them together on this shared journey, knowing they couldn't have done it alone. "Are you ready?" Calvin said, hugging Rosalie and planting a very sweet kiss on her cheek. "I am," she said, just as Catomancy slipped out the open door and made haste to get a head start on this trail. He was going to follow along and see what happened. Greer and Molly sat on the windowsill and decided to stay in the suite. If Catomancy needed them for anything, he would call. Rosalie and Calvin easily located the trailhead, clearly marked this way for some great food. The trail was easy going and very maintained, so even strollers and wheelchairs could make the trek. It all seemed very simple, idyllic, and fresh out there. But the forest didn't get its name for nothing. Forbidden bears lurked around the tree line and into the hedgerows. Baby bears, mama bears, and daddy bears, who were simply plumb fed up with trespassing and littering, were going to make themselves known if they saw this couple do anything out of the ordinary. Now, out of the ordinary was loosely defined, since bears had very different agendas than humans. Catomancy immediately sensed the danger lurking in the forest. But a cat was no match for a whole gang of bears. What would he do if something happened? How could he protect his mistress and her person? Well, the old cat still had some very useful tricks up his sleeve. "I can almost taste this sandwich," Rosalie said, salivating at the thought of the ooey gooey grilled cheese with raw honey, as the menu they'd found in their suite proclaimed. "Yeah, let's go a little faster," Calvin said, noting they had been walking now for what seemed like more than 10 minutes. Maybe they had taken a wrong turn, he thought. Could they be lost? Chapter 10. Time and Other Dimensions. Calvin checked his watch. Nope, they'd only been walking for a few minutes according to the timepiece. But it felt much longer. "Any sign of it up ahead?" Rosalie asked, wanting to eat her cherry tart if they didn't get there soon. "I don't see anything," he said, perplexed. Had they deviated from the straight path somehow? That seemed impossible. There hadn't been any crossroads or changes in the terrain. Maybe he'd missed it. "Could we have taken a wrong turn?" he said, wanting to walk faster. And then Rosalie recalled the bellhop's weird demeanor about the trail. "Remember how the bellhop acted about this walk?" she said, trying to recall exactly what he'd said about it. Yeah, like there was some story or happening he wasn't supposed to be talking about. His senses sharpened. "I think we've walked through some portal into another dimension somehow." Calvin started looking more closely at the surroundings. "But how?" Rosalie said, wanting to sit down on a fallen log that was nearby. "I feel so sleepy," she said. Yawning. "No, get up now," he said, moving to get her to her feet. "We can't fall for that now," he said. "We'll never get back to our room." With sheer determination, he made himself keep standing. He had Rosalie around the waist and was almost dragging her forward. "Keep moving, 1 foot in front of the other, darling," he said, fighting the urge to sit down for a moment. "We're almost out of it now." He kept slowly walking, pulling Rosalie along. And then a slight shift in the air, the breezy, happy feeling returning. "We're almost past it now. Keep moving," he said. And then they were free of it. The old fairy goddess, Cantinkara, looked upset. She had wanted this couple so much. Oh, the things she could have done with them if they had only sat down for a moment longer. Calvin and Rosalie shook the fairy dust from their minds and off their clothes, and just up ahead they spotted it. The sharp roof lines and rustic-looking cabin had smoke billowing out of its chimneys. Deep green moss covered the outer walls. The couple ran and stumbled their way off the trail and up the gravel path. The Hidden Foot Tavern emitted a welcoming feeling, and the smell of toasted grilled cheese wafted from the beckoning front door. "We made it," Calvin said with relief as he checked his watch again. The whole trip had only taken 7 minutes, but somehow in that time they had almost fallen prey to a fairy portal, lost their way, and possibly never returned home again. They both thanked the protection of their guides and slipped inside the Hidden Foot Tavern, excited for lunch and a chance to deconstruct the last few moments.